I know. And we are live. Welcome to the MLB Strategy Show. It is Tuesday, June 14th. I am Josh Engelman. I'm joined by Eric Lindquist. We are brought to you by Prize Picks. And depending on where you look today, on this stream in particular, it's not going to be seen. If you go to the website, you'll see it immediately. Awesemo.com, no longer. Welcome to Stokastic. That is going to be a tough one for me for at least a week or two, considering I have been saying Awesemo for over 4 years now. Going to be tough to break that cycle, but we are here now as Stokastic. You'll see that change graphically over the next couple days. Eric, how are you?
I'm doing well. Yeah, it's an exciting time. Rebrand of sorts, but at the same time, it's not, because everything stays the same. Same guys, same crew. Just having Alex too, just be so supportive of everything that's happened here at this channel, growing it the way that you, Lofty, Adam have really just jump-started this channel. So it's kind of just an acknowledgement, if you will, of all the hard work you guys have done. Looking forward to kind of this new era, if you will. It's going to be an exciting time. So hopefully you guys enjoy the name. Hopefully you guys enjoy the new design. And hopefully you understand that nothing else is going to be changing.
Yeah, not a single change happening here. It's just a rebrand. We haven't been like acquired or sold or anything. Nobody's leaving. Everything is staying exactly the same. It's just simply a different name for the company, and one that fits the whole scope of everything. I don't want to say better, because obviously I was a big fan of the Awesemo name, but Awesemo is also Alex Baker, so there is some mild confusion there. We're a different company now, and it's exciting to dive into it.
Would you like to be the one who kind of talks about Stokastic in terms of, I mean, it's if you just Google the definition, I'm sure everybody's done that so far. So instead of CH, we got the K, randomly determined, having random probability distribution or pattern that may be analyzed statistically, but may not be predicted precisely. That's kind of what we do. We take leverage into account. We take all of these different factors that people aren't thinking about on a day-to-day basis. It's not just playing the best plays. It's having a range of outcomes, and kind of nice to have our name encapsulate what we do.
Right. It's when you find out, when you realize what Stokastic means and what the basis of it all is, it fits our brand and the things that we try to do here very well. So it's going to be, a little bit of a learning curve for people, but after a couple months, it'll just be over. People just know it. For anybody that was looking for the process show this morning, it is recorded. I did record it with no audio whatsoever, which makes it not all that interesting of a video. So I'm going to dub my own video after this strategy show, and it will be up later, probably around 1 o'clock. It covers yesterday's NBA slate results. Spoiler alert, that went poorly. It covers today's MLB contests. That should be fun. And it covers the best contests you can get into for PGA this week and the US Open, which lots of good ones out there today. So make sure you're getting into those things. But the video will be out at 1 o'clock because I am a moron.
You said it, not me.
Yeah, you ready to talk about this slate? Because we have 15 games to break down today. Everybody plays. Some of them more than once, but we got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, well, we had a 16 total games that we talked about the other day. Somebody decided to try to talk shit to me about, Eric said 16. There's only 30 teams in MLB. And I'm like, look, there's a lot of double headers going on, and slates have started to incorporate the early and late. Just get off my dick. We're ready to ride. Let's go.
Here we go. First one up, Phillies and Marlins, 4.6 run implied total for the Phillies, 3.9 for the Marlins. It's Zach Eflin and Trevor Rogers. We actually have a little bit to talk about here from a pitching perspective. There are a lot of arms on today's slate that are pulling no ownership whatsoever. This is not that game. Zach Eflin, 13% owned. Trevor Rogers, 7% owned. Both of those numbers are pretty sizable on a day where there are 30 pitching options. I think both of those numbers look about right. I like Eflin a little bit more than I like Rogers. I wouldn't say that either one of these guys are major priorities, but they are definitely a part of the group of guys that should get owned.
I agree. I definitely have much more interest in the Eflin side. Trevor Rogers, back-end starter now for Miami, coming off of the year last year where he was fantastic. And now you're seeing a 488 expected slugging. The strikeouts, 19.6%. That's way, way down from 26.5% career average and 28.5% last season. He's still young. He's 24. He's a touted prospect. There's still a lot going for him, but it's definitely been working in reverse here. Miami's been rich with talent in terms of their starting rotation for a while. He's a guy with a plus fastball. Maybe he can start generating some of those swings and misses here going forward, but it has not been too positive for me. Trying to make Trevor Rogers a thing. You're going to get lower ownership on him, obviously, than Eflin, but you should, because Eflin's just the much better pitcher. Under a 30% hard hit percentage, 20.6% K percentage is just kind of middle of the road. But in terms of an SP2, you don't really need anything exceptional. He's 7,700 for DraftKings purposes. He's facing a Miami offense that's much better than you would expect against right-handed pitching. But at the same time, he's just a really good pitcher himself.
When we look at bats in this one, the Phillies are 21st in aggregate ownership, 18th in our stack score. The Marlins are 19th in aggregate ownership, 14th in our stack score. Do you see either one of these teams as teams you want to try to target from a stack perspective?
Yeah, I'll definitely get to some Philly. Again, Trevor Rogers, it's just been on the struggle bus. And at the same time, the hard hit has kind of been limited. You've got some massive bats, even left on left, Harper, Schwarber, Alec Boehm. Don't ever sleep on him. Terrible in the field, great at the plate. Rhys Hoskins, Castellanos, JT Realmuto, 1 through 6. There's just lots of opportunities. And now you also get guys like Bryson Stott, even against lefties. It's been decent enough. We'll see how the back end of the lineup really pans out, but you don't have to get that different considering every single team is in play, 15 gamer. You can kind of just take 1 through 6 and be done with Philadelphia. So that'll probably be my approach. Miami side, I generally do like to play them a little bit more than the field does, just because of some of their splits against righties. Overall 115 WRC plus against that handedness. You get Jazz Chisholm leading off. You could always go to him as like a one-off type of situation, but really not that enthusiastic against Eflin on a full slate.
I have the Phillies 12th. I have the Marlins 20th. I don't really have any sort of major priorities here. Certainly enough power for some of the righty bats for Philly, a big righty park factor in Philadelphia. So if you want to go to any of the righty power bats, Castellanos, Hoskins, I think that's totally fine. But I don't expect either one of these teams to be teams that I get to a lot. There's just either not enough ownership from a pitching perspective to try to get the leverage, or they're just, I'm going to name 11 teams that I like more than the Phillies. So at some point in time, you just have to draw the line. I don't have anything else to add. Who is your favorite bat in this entire game?
Ooh, there you go. I would say price considered Rhys Hoskins. Okay. 4,200 first base. I mean, first, it's just loaded everywhere. I would throw out kind of a Jazz Chisholm if you're trying to do anything against Eflin. If he starts climbing to 15, 20% throughout the day, he's going to probably stick at around 13% or so. So it's really not that big of a deal, but Jazz Chisholm favorite from the Miami side.
All righty. Anything else you want to touch on in this game?
Keep it moving.
Let's do it. Game numero 2. Yankees and Rays, 4.5 run implied total for the Yanks, 3 for the Rays, because the Rays get a date with Garrett Cole. He is going for the Yankees. Corey Kluber on the hill for the Rays. Not a great start for Cole in his last time out. It was a great day to have like 80% of him. I'm hoping that gets fixed, but he is the current highest owned pitcher on the slate by a mile. 43% expected ownership on DraftKings right now, 30 on FanDuel. He's 10,500 on DraftKings. Corey Kluber not owned at all, did not show up for me either. Obviously tough matchup against the Yankees. So talk to me about what you want to do with Garrett Cole.
You want to play him. You got to try to not have the recency bias, and obviously the field doesn't either. So if that's kind of not even a point. But Brett Phillips, G-Man Choi, Kevin Kiermaier, every time they get inserted into the lineup against righties, you're adding 29, 29.5, and 42% strikeout rates to this Tampa Bay Rays side. So I think that Garrett Cole should be getting this kind of attention going back into Yankee Stadium. I'm just going to chalk it up as a bad start. We've seen this so many times with Garrett Cole. You can definitely have stacks on the other side of it. Not today because it's a 15 gamer, but on some of those shorter slates, I've definitely been known to, or been prone to doing that from time to time. But it's just a Tampa Bay team that at the same time that they'll stack up for the handedness against righties, you get those three specific guys back into the lineup. Taylor Walls as well is not good, 26.3% K percentage. A lot of strikeouts to be had. He should be very, very popular. And there really aren't that many guys at the top end that I'm super enamored to go towards. Like Shane Bieber makes a lot of sense, but he's in Coors. So we'll see kind of where that ownership lands. Nick Pivetta is garnering quite a bit of attention. He's just clear above and away at his current rates, still a 30.7% K guy. I don't see any reason that you would get away from him today.
Well, one person in chat does, but he's a dope. So
let me guess who that is, even though I don't have chat up yet.
Oh, man.
Sean, where are you at?
He showed up in 37% of my sim. We got him at 43% ownership. He is so clearly the number one pitcher today. It's not even really close. And that's why you see the ownership like that. And the good part here is that if you want to go to Cole, there are 30 teams that you could roster in your stacks to go with him. You can get away from chalk. You can have a chalk pitcher build and have anybody hitting, and they are going to be unowned if you want them to be. It's that simple. So I will be playing Garrett Cole, and I am very happy to do so, particularly because Sean thinks that that's a bad idea.
Nothing like getting the real stamp of approval there on the opposite, just fading. It's incredible. But either way, I was going to ask you this because I've been thinking about it going through previous 15 game slates and 14 game slates in Cruncher. Do you feel more inclined to jam a pitcher like this? Because it seems like a lot of top players do just go completely overweight to the best pitcher on the board and on slates like this.
I have no qualms with it. I wouldn't be surprised if that was something that happened.
Like 6-8 gamers with Garrett Cole here, maybe you sit around the field or a little below. I really don't see any reason that I'm not going to be over the field today.
Yeah, I anticipate him being very easily my most exposed pitcher. I think he's just the most efficient way to get to a guy that is like guaranteed to give you a good score. When I say guaranteed, you know what I mean, but like, I don't expect him to give up 3 home runs in the first inning again and get absolutely shellacked. Like there's a reason he's priced where he is. There's a reason he projects where he is, because more often than not, when Garrett Cole steps on the mound, he just mows people down. The 3-run implied total on the Rays is the lowest implied total on the slate. I don't know why anybody would want to talk and be like, well, Garrett Cole pitches today, so I've got to fade him. Like that kind of thought process is what is the quickest way to find who's a losing player.
Yep.
Sometimes you got to say it. That's why we're stochastic, people. That's why we're stochastic. I don't think that we're talking about Corey Kluber at all. And I certainly don't think that we're talking about the Rays, unless you want to go there because of the leverage against Cole. Is that something you'd be interested in?
Yeah, in 150, definitely. Won't get to it in a 20 max sense. I won't get to it, even in some of my 3 max stuff, just no chance that I land there. But in 150, it's always the most popular pitcher on a slate that has blow up potential. We just saw it. You could get to a couple lineups, especially if you're going to be playing over the field Garrett Cole. It makes sense to have that stack on the back end in case you just get that evisceration. I do find it hard to believe, though, that against the Rays, that the strikeouts, when you just look at the back half of that lineup and some of these lefties, Kevin Kiermaier's also been batting up higher and higher. They've been using him he's a guy with speed, utility, and so he's been batting up higher in the order. That's more opportunities for Garrett Cole to rack up strikeouts as well. So I'm feeling pretty confident that the Rays aren't a necessity whatsoever. More of like I'm willing to, in 150, hedge out all my exposure to a ton of Garrett Cole.
I cannot get a contact in my left eye to feel good. I thought I swapped it out really quickly while you were talking there. I sure didn't. It's somehow worse now than it was the first time. So I'm going to switch to a third contact in a second, driving me absolutely insane.
You run out of there. You set me up for something and I'll just talk for like 2 minutes.
We got it. Well, let's talk about Yankees Bats, which I expected to look a lot better for me. They showed up as my 16th top stack, and that matches where we have the Yankees in the top stack tool. They're 25th in our stack score. Clearly one-off bats again for the Yankees. I'm going to feel pretty good about. They have a massive power advantage in this one, but I actually don't think I'm going to get to a lot of New York. Do you?
I am. There's no way that I'm not.
Go for it.
So there's a couple of reasons. 1 through 9, you get power. You're starting to see, not just because Higashioka can hit a 35-mile-an-hour fastball out, but because all of his hard hit data, if you were to show up, I'm not sure. Jose Trevino, I'm not sure if he'll end up being in the lineup. He got scratched Sunday, we'll see if he ends up back and if he's healthy. But I mean, Higgie's still a guy with some pretty good peripherals. Matt Carpenter has been, I don't know, revelatory, maybe is the right word so far early going. I don't expect it to continue at this kind of a pace, but it's a perfect ballpark for lefties. Even down there in the 9-hole, you've had Joey Gallo and his 49.4% hard hit percentage. Oh, and then you get Stanton, Judge, Torres, Donaldson. We're talking some of the best power bats in baseball. It's pretty unfair that New York 1 through 9 has as much power as what they do. And then on the other side, Corey Kluber has been decent in preventing some of that hard hit, but still a 481 expected slugging and a 280 expected batting average. Not walking guys. You know these guys are going to be up at the plate swinging. If he's not generating swings and misses, this ball is going to travel in 80-degree weather in New York still. It's just a team that's too potent to write off on any slate. And these are the kind of slates where you don't have to worry about as much ownership with them either. They're completely unowned. If they were maybe 5, 6, even 7, 10%, you have to have some kind of a conversation because it's just too much. They're completely unowned. Everybody's going elsewhere. That's when you want to be getting to Yankees bats.
I don't know if it's 1, 2, or 12 in chat. It said Sean V's the type of dude that says, I got to fold pocket aces here because I'll lose 20% of the time. That is just a fantastic thing to see. Because that's basically the example of Garrett Cole today. Mm-hmm. Look, I agree with everything you're saying on the Yanks. It's certainly not a team that I'd be bummed about having. I just don't get the sense that they're going to end up ranking high enough. We'll see if that line moves at all. I don't have anything else I want to touch on here, but I will hit you with the same question I hit you with for game 1. Who is your favorite bat in this game?
I mean, I'm kind of an Aaron Judge stan when it comes to it. He's somebody that I find myself on days where he's completely unknown or where people struggle to get up to him. You just find a way. 6,200 on DraftKings, 5%. That's the kind of one-off that I'm interested in getting to. If I'm going to have any kind of a value stack in addition to Cole or other guys that are on the mound that are a little bit more expensive, I can still find paths to get Aaron Judge. Hard to believe that I won't have at least 10 plus % of Aaron Judge on a day where he's this low owned.
I think I'm liking Matt Carpenter, 4,300 first base, third base eligibility. Park plays up to lefty power. Kluber's a righty, so you get that sort of advantage. That would be the place that I'd be looking to most.
I'm so with you. 782 expected slugging. He just won me a GPP on Sunday. I love the man right now.
Gave you the shout out. No one will hear the audio because I gave you the shout out on the process show, being like, "Oh, we're looking at the four seamer." By the way, that audio doesn't exist, so I won't say it again.
Well, I appreciate you. I've just I've enjoyed watching the process, being able to look at some of the contest structure because it's something that you get in the habit of researching and talking sports all day. Sometimes you don't pay enough attention to that stuff. And those are the most important decisions you make, contest selections. So definitely be checking that out. I appreciate you making sure. I was still playing the $4 no matter what, but revamping it and knowing that you're getting in your money good over there.
Let's talk game 3 here. Nats and Braves, 3.7 run implied total for the Nats, 5.2 for the Braves. Max Fried on the hill for Atlanta. This was supposed to be Steven Strasburg for Washington. It is not. He's back on the DL, whatever the hell the acronym is nowadays. So it's looking like Josiah Gray going for the Nats. We don't have him in our ownership projections right now, but best I can tell. Maybe we do if it's refreshed. Actually, he is. No, he's just in my table. He showed up in my sim 2.5% of the time. Max Fried, 5% owned, second most expensive pitcher on the slate. Should he be like 9 times less owned than Garrett Cole? No. Do I think that he's under-owned? I sure do. Is Cole the better option? For sure. But I want to get to a little bit more Max Fried. Showed up in my sim 12% of the time. I like the idea of being like 2 or 3x the field. Getting to 15% Fried if he's 5% owned, that feels like a winning move today.
I think so, but Max Fried's just a guy that I've never, and it's weird just to say I've never gotten him right because there's a lot of pitchers you're going to get wrong from time to time in baseball. But Max Fried is 23% K percentage. If you just look at the rest of the board, you're paying 10 plus K to get to him and you're limiting. There's enough value bat spots where it's not too prohibitive to even play Cole, Fried and find some ways to it. But it's just not it's not the most appealing route for me to go building lineups today. I tend to be lower on him just because of that K percentage, but there's no doubt that against Washington, that there's opportunity to be had here. You get Robles, Lane Thomas, Yadiel Hernandez, Maikel Franco. Just the top of that order, just nobody's striking out. Ruiz as the catcher has been just brutal as opposed to Riley Adams. He's just striking out an 8.8% clip. Josh Bell never strikes out. Soto's incredible. Nelson Cruz murders lefties. It's a tough, it's a difficult spot for me to see him accumulating a lot of those strikeouts. The most likely route that he works out is, 6 innings pitched, 7 innings pitched, 4 strikeouts, 5 strikeouts, and you just kind of avoid some of the damage. But I tried to pick on Washington. It's just not very fruitful.
Okay. Do you think you'll go to Josiah Gray at 8,900?
I think I will. Again, his K percentage is the thing that we talked about a little bit yesterday. He got scratched. I think it was just a weather-related issue. I think he was set up. He went through his normal ritual, and then they ended up having like an hour delay or something, and he ends up getting scratched from yesterday. So we'll just make sure we get that confirmation that he's on the bump, but north of a 26% K percentage, that's the kind of interesting stuff. He just tends to give up hard contact, and against Atlanta, you're definitely going to have feast and famine type scenarios where you can definitely rack up strikeouts with the likes of Duvall, Riley, Contreras, Swanson, Acuna. All of those guys strike out at a pretty high clip. Ozzie Albies, the only guy striking out sub 20%, but you could also get absolutely slaughtered. So it's going to be kind of a both sides of it for me.
Now, from a Bats perspective, we're about to have a very different conversation. The Nats are 27th in our stack score, 28th in ownership. They are not getting touched. If you want to get to the Nats, by all means, you're going to be one of the only people there. The Braves, on the other hand, 8th in ownership, 3rd in our stack score. I have them as my number 1 overall scoring stack, also 4th in value. I think they're easy to get to. I love my Atlanta Braves, the reigning, defending, undisputed champions of baseball. Talk to me about the Braves. I think there's some positive leverage to be had here.
Yeah, there's definitely positive leverage to be had. And talking about how potent of an offense, I mean, they're not number 1 on my board, but they're definitely number 1 in your hearts. That's for sure. Austin Riley, Acuna, Ozuna, you see power 1 through 9. It's another one of those teams. Michael Harris joining the fray. Young lefty bat that can be just potent as well. I mean, they have an embarrassment of riches that are coming up from their system now, and it's looking pretty good for the future. William Contreras, if he ever ends up in that lineup, is actually leading the team in expected slugging percentage with 629. Needs to start lofting the ball a little bit more, but I look at this as a team that you can stack up every day. It's especially fun to stack up teams like this on days when they're coming in under-owned, and you just like you feel the same way about Atlanta that I do about the Yankees.
Okay. That makes some sense. But yeah, they're grading out so well for me. I was surprised. I thought there would be a little bit more ownership. It's interesting to see that they're 3rd in our stack tool, but 8th in ownership. I mean, there's just, other than Acuna at 11%, the highest owned Braves bat is Matt Olson at 4. That just feels appealing to me.
Yeah, it's fantastic. But it makes sense because if you're just going strictly off Vegas totals, you have Toronto 5.7, Boston 5.8, you have Coors, you have so many spots that just stand out. And
Cardinals,
this is
Padres,
this is a good spot. But I mean, this is kind of Atlanta every day against anybody, right? Like this is true. Unless you have an ace on the mound, Atlanta has that kind of power where, I mean, Acuna hasn't even been part of it for the last week, and they're finding ways to double-digit runs and tons of home runs, solo shots everywhere. You saw it last night. You're probably going to see some iteration of it again tonight. It's definitely a team that on these massive, large slates, if you want to find easy leverage, go to these teams that you know the upside's there.
I can say right now, I just ran a quick crunch of just 5-man stacks to see. The Braves came out as my 2nd most owned stack, and no one will be surprised that the Guardians are number 1, but this is like without taking leverage into account or anything like that.
Albies is done for Eric. Yeah, no, I'm aware. Ozzie Albies broke his foot yesterday. It was brutal.
Yeah.
It's just like a swing and miss. Yeah. It was like a swing and miss, and he went to the ground. It was really, really weird. But
favorite bat in this game?
Acuna Matata.
Yeah, that should normally be the answer. I might say Austin Riley. I don't have much of a difference between the two, but with Riley being a 3rd baseman, it's always easier to find a bit of an outfielder. So I'm good.
We have 4 million outfielders. Yeah, nothing else for this.
Yeah. Not going to have a hard time finding an outfield bat. That's for sure. Yeah. All right. Ooh, this one's taking forever. That's 3 games down, which means it's time to talk a little bit about the schedule for the rest of the day. After a small break when the MLB strategy show ends, Eric will be back, I believe, for the PGA strategy show at 1 p.m. I will then be back for MLB Deeper Dive at 4:45. I don't believe you are on MLB Live Before Lock, or are you? Are you pitching a 3? You doing 3 today?
I got to do a cool thing. I'm going on the field of the Dodgers-Angels game with my buddy. We're going to go hang out with Trout, and he's buddies with Cody Bellinger. So I have a real rough day ahead of me is what I've got.
Sounds
Look
terrible.
At Jordan knows. Yeah, it's going to be awful. I'm going to be at that game. So I'll have a couple stacks of that one just in cases.
Well, just in case, I might need you to run out onto the field, try to help out a little bit. Help us
the Angels
out
might need me. Yeah, back into that lineup is woof.
Also, free content for today, which you can get at stokastic.com. MLB top stacks. We're going to talk about that for the entire show. PGA top golfers. Eric will be talking about that through the entire PGA strategy show. Both pieces of content, fantastic and free for you today. To the Blue Jays we go, as you mentioned them before. 5.2 run implied total for the Jays, 3.8 for the O's. Yusei Kikuchi and Jordan Lyles. Jordan Lyles pulling precisely 0 ownership at this moment. Yusei Kikuchi, on the other hand, he's at 7% ownership, 8K. Showed up in my sim actually at 10%. So a guy in the mid-tier that I'd be perfectly accept. Like, I think I'd be happy to get a little bit of him, that's for sure. Decent strikeout matchup here, in my opinion, against the Orioles. A lot of righty bats, though.
Yeah.
That for what it's will. And it's not like Kikuchi goes deep into games, but do you want to get to Kikuchi?
This guy is so difficult for me. And I will say, we have to also take into consideration how different Camden Yards is playing. So when I look at the splits for Baltimore, they have an 89 WRC plus, 25.8% K percentage. I mean, the strikeouts are still going to exist. And I think that makes Kikuchi viable immediately. But you got to think that going into Toronto is a massive ballpark upgrade for these righties now facing a lefty. We saw that Aaron Judge, I always go back to it, but Aaron Judge hit a ball that it is impossible that it didn't leave the yard. 29 to 30 ballparks. It was one of the hardest hit balls of the year, and it didn't leave Camden. We're starting to see some massive splits for Baltimore, home and away in terms of power. So I think Toronto is definitely a spot where I think they might be a little bit more viable. Doesn't mean that I want to go out on my way to be rostering them today, but it does mean that I do have some issues for a guy who gives up hard contact, 48.4%, 517 expected slugging. You just look at the K percentage, though, and it aligns nicely. Over 25% for him, over 25% for Baltimore against lefties on the season. That makes it pretty viable.
I certainly don't need to talk about Lyles here. Probably need to talk a little bit about the Blue Jays, who are 7th in aggregate ownership, but 13th in our stack score, 5th in just general top stack, but very expensive. So they are 25th in top value. Are you liking the Jays today? How do they compare to, say, Atlanta or the Yankees to you? Because clearly there are quite a few bats in the Blue Jays lineup that you are more than okay with having.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, the Yankees have the 4.5 implied total. So, I mean, it's going to be a team that I get to, and it's going to be one I go way over because I just don't think the field will. Toronto, it just feels like you want to get to all the guys 1 through 5 and everybody else goes by the wayside. I think I do like Atlanta just slightly more than I like Toronto, especially because it looks like the field is representing more right now on the Blue Jays side. But they're starting to come to life. You were never really worried about them. We'll see if Matt Chapman ends up back in the lineup. It's been a hot second since we've seen him. I hate rostering Raimel Tapia. I never will. There's just a limited amount of bats I'd want to get to, stacking them up, and it feels like the field's there about appropriately. I think I'm probably with you where I still like Atlanta a little bit more, but I definitely still feel like the Yankees are the team as things stand right now that I just want to be prioritizing.
Let's see how much of them I got on that crunch. They were 4th for me, so nothing too crazy.
I mean, that's about appropriate. I mean, they're a really good offense, and if it's not going to be Cleveland or San Diego, it's not going to be really that owned. So you're probably all right making that kind of a stand if you wanted to go to Toronto. I'm just prioritizing other spots.
Yeah, that's fair. Makes sense. Happy to one-off most of this team, that's for sure.
Yes, definitely.
Blue Jays bats, Orioles bats. I don't get the sense that I'm going to be getting to any Orioles stacks.
Nope. It's a team that I do like to play quite a bit, not on a 15-game slate and not against a lefty that does miss bats, against a team that just can't hit the ball. That's cool.
Favorite bat in this game?
I mean, Vlad feels like cheating. If Matt Chapman's back in that lineup, crazy amount of power, 7-hole, nobody is going to roster him. You could say that about a lot of guys on this kind of a slate, but third base eligible, let's do that.
Bo Bichette is the person who graded out the best for me, but you can kind of just pick either him or Vlad or honestly,
Kirk is a
Gabriel
phenomenal
Moreno.
catcher. Oh, yeah. I love that guy. He's going to be really, really good. But I think just Alejandro Kirk, he's probably going to be DHing more than likely. But yeah, Gabriel Moreno, super, super cheap. Just a young prospect that people probably haven't heard of. 2K flat before, now he's 2,200. That's really negligible difference. So yeah, he's going to be good long term.
Anything else in this one?
Nope.
Another team with a 5+ run total. That would be the Red Sox, 5.5 run implied total. That is against the Oakland A's, 3.9 run implied total. Nick Pivetta for Boston. Jared Koenig going for Oakland, allegedly. He is not owned, and I'm not worried about him. Pivetta, on the other hand, 16% owned at 8,900. Did show up in my crunch at 10%. So I have him slightly over owned, but at the same time, it's a decent strikeout matchup against the A's. They don't have a large amount of power, that's for sure. I'll get some Pivetta. I wouldn't say that he's an aggressive priority. I see just a couple other guys that have single-digit ownership that I'd like to get over on, whereas I think Pivetta is basically properly owned.
Yeah, this is your other probably cash game SP2. Like, I think that's pretty fair to say for cash game. I mean, Cease shouldn't be too hard to fit in, but I think Pivetta, I guess I would have to go back and forth. I mean, you could just do the ownership Cole Cease thing, but Pivetta against Oakland, just kind of the way that they set up, 75 WRC plus versus righties, 24% K percentage. For tournament purposes, it's impossible not to have shares of him for me. Especially because he's going to be lower owned as we're getting everything updated for Cease, Bassett, and of the likening. Like I like Pivetta more than I like Bassett, who's getting more ownership. Dylan Cease against Detroit, I mean, another fantastic spot. But if you land on that $8,800, $8,900 number, like a lot of people might, between Cease and Pivetta, that might be an important talking point today. But I think you just should have shares of both of them. They just stand out in their matchups.
Do you have any Jared Koenig thoughts here?
No, I have the idea of don't roster lefties versus Boston. That's my idea. I mean, we've seen one outing. It was not pretty for Jared Koenig, and it's not going to probably be pretty again today.
Red Sox Bats, 6th in aggregate ownership, 8th in stack score. They are 4th in the top stack metric. They are 4th in my top stack metric. I'm very happy to get to the Boston Red Sox today. I like that implied total. I like trying to get some of these righty bats up against the lefty and Koenig. What are you doing with Boston?
So at the same time that I don't want to roster Jared Koenig, 5,600, pretty potent offense. He's good enough. It seems like with AAA numbers that I don't want to get crazy. He had a 2.21 ERA, a 1.02 whip, was missing some bats. Again, last outing, not maybe indicative of the guy we're going to see long-term here, but he was still inducing ground balls. He had 8 ground balls and that went to 4 fly balls, 76 pitches. Like he's stretched out enough. I think he can be serviceable enough against Boston, but I mean, I really don't have interest in going to either side of it. I mean, the Red Sox always feel like an offense that goes a little bit over-owned when it all comes out in the wash, and they have a massive implied total. That's really all you need to know. Like, obviously, people are going to go their direction to some extent, and I just think there's other offenses that I would rather get to. It looks like Koenig was just decent enough, whereas some of these other guys, like Jordan Lyles, confirmed gas can. We've got Atlanta. Josiah Gray confirmed giving up tons of hits. We don't really know what to expect with Koenig, but I'm not going to go out of my way to roster him. But I just don't think that I'm going to probably end up on as many Red Sox as I was anticipating.
Okay. I like that core of the order. Not that this is going to be a huge shock, but Devers, Martinez, Bogart's story looking damn tasty with everybody in the 5K. So if you have the salary, don't be afraid because these guys are only 5% owned today. Do you get to the A's bats because they're a good value? 4th in top value odds. They're 3rd for me in top value. 11th in our stack score is neutral to the ownership. Are you seeing anything on the Oakland side? Do you want to try to get some leverage against Pivetta?
Not on a 15-game slate. Not for me.
I'm with you. Favorite bat in the game?
Trevor Story.
I agree. He showed up the most for me. If If Ref Snyder hits leadoff potentially for Boston at 2,200, that is the spot from a value perspective. Probably a really nice cash option in that regard, but just wanted to point that one out.
You're just playing cores in cash.
That's also very true. Let's see. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
You're playing literally 5 batters from Cleveland in cash. You're playing Rosario. You're playing Gonzalez. You're playing Straw. You're playing maybe Hedges, 2,800 probably. Josh Naylor. The prices are broken, so you're just playing Cleveland.
The Detroit Tigers, 3.4 run implied total, taking on the White Sox, 4.5. It's Tyler Alexander, allegedly, and Dylan Cease, not allegedly. And boy, oh boy, is Cease popular. Second most popular arm for today, 37% owned. Showed up a little bit less than that in my sims, but he is very clearly, to me, the second best option. How are you handling Cease against the Tigers?
You should roster him because the only team worse than Oakland I just talked about against righties is Detroit with their lovely, and I do mean lovely, 67 WRC plus against the split, 101 ISO, 24.7% K percentage. I don't really know. Detroit's just bad. And I mean, Lance Lynn yesterday, he's definitely got some problems, and we kind of knew that going in. Hopefully nobody got too burned by that for FanDuel purposes, but this is different. Dylan Cease is going to just mow down some of these Detroit bats, and it's just impossible to get away from rostering some. It's just a question of what the ownership ends up landing at. If he gets steamed up to the 35-40% mark, yikes. But you're going to get so many spots where it's just unowned for bats that I feel more comfortable on slates like this, getting to some of the more popular pitchers. Cole, Cease, we kind of talked about that quite a bit more with Cole. But I mean, I guess the question is for you, Pivetta or Cease for you at the same number?
I like Cease more for sure. Grades out better. I think that the ownership ratio is about right. Maybe it's a little too extreme, but I will be getting to more Cease before I get to Pivetta.
Okay. And I'm just keeping in mind that if Pivetta somehow, because again, we're talking half the ownership right now, and I think that that's appropriate. If we start talking about a third of the ownership for Pivetta, when it comes back around for MLB Live before lock, it's a different conversation. And I think Pivetta just needs to be prioritized.
He does need to be prioritized. That's for sure. There's a lot in this little section. Like we're going to talk a little bit about like Sean Manaea, who's at 7% ownership, 8,500. That's another guy that I'd be happy to get like double the field on. There's a lot in this area that I think is getting underrepresented.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, from a bats perspective, no one is going to the Tigers. 28% owned, 27th in top stack. My question to you will be this, because Dylan Cease is prone to putting some guys on base. Are you trying to get to the Tigers?
Not a chance in hell.
Can't say
0% chance.
28th in my top stack metric. I'm not interested. White Sox, 10th in ownership, 7th in stack score. They're a top 10 team for me today. I would like to take advantage of some of these White Sox bats for sure. Not really pulling all that much ownership outside of AJ Pollock. I think they're like a nice secondary stack.
Yeah. It's just another offense that I don't really want to be landing on. I mean, we're talking about Drew Hutchinson with his 5.38 xFIP so far at the big league level. Played in 10 games, not really a whole lot of, he's not stretched out. He's not going to pitch at all. He's 4K and just a reliever, but we're looking at a bullpen that is a little bit better than you would expect in Detroit. So I'm not looking at White Sox backs as anything that I want to be getting to on this kind of a slate. If you got to Abreu as a one-off, we saw yesterday, that can work out for you. If you got to Robert or Pollock leading off, I don't completely blame you, but so many other places I'd rather go.
Anything else? Oh, not anything else in this game. Favorite bat in this game? I got mine, and I think it's pretty easy.
Jose Abreu probably.
Give me Lou Bob.
Oh my God. I love him.
Likewise. I don't have anything else for this game, though. That's for sure.
Nope, nothing.
All right, let's hit another one, get to the midway point of this. Mets and Brewers, 4.4 run implied total for the Mets, 3.6 for the Brew Crew. It's Chris Bassett and Adrian Hauser. We finally get another pitcher that's pulling some ownership here. This is the third most owned guy in Chris Bassett, 20% owned on DK, 8% owned on FanDuel. Showed up in that same amount of lineups for me when I ran my crunch. So I think Chris Bassett is properly owned. And I think Chris Bassett is the third best pitching option of the slate. Are you targeting Chris Bassett today against the Brewers?
Yeah, this is probably, I think, third for me though, out of that grouping of guys that are actually pulling ownership at the pitcher position. I like Pivetta more. I like for sure Dylan Cease more, just straight up projection wise. And Chris Bassett probably falls in third. 8,200 though has a lot of utility to get you some extra bats. I mean, a $600, $700 difference between the other two. I'm very curious. I haven't built lineups yet, but I'm curious if I just land on more of him as a result of needing it to get to some of the stacks I really want to be playing on this kind of a slate. If I land on him, I have no problem with him whatsoever because we've just seen routinely now Oakland to here. I mean, he's just got that upside 25.3% K percentage. And that's still 2% better than the likes of like a Max Fried. I mean, the matchup's much more difficult, but as good as Adames has been with his 598 expected slugging, you're adding a guy who strikes out at a 28% clip back into this lineup day in, day out, batting second. So that gives you at least maybe another shot or two to accumulate a strikeout. You've got further down the list, just lots of guys that you don't expect to be striking out as much as what they do. Renfro's north of 26%, not facing his favorite handedness. Christian Yelich gets the split, but 24.4% K percentage. More strikeouts than you'd expect, especially when they line up against a righty. They get Chase Peterson in there, 24% strikeout rate too. So it's just an appealing spot. Tyrone Taylor, who's a guy who kind of avoids strikeouts, really the only guy in the lineup who does to any kind of an extent. He'll be batting ninth more than likely. So see how the lineup order comes out, but I might land on some just as a necessity of needing to save those $600, and I'm just fine because he's a serviceable enough pitcher.
Okay. No ownership really coming into either side of this one from a hitter perspective. The Mets are 18th in aggregate ownership. The Brewers are 24th. Both of these teams are in the middle of the pack in our stack score. The most exposed person coming out of my crunch was Francisco Lindor at 4%. I don't see a lot of offense to be had in this one. If I was going to do anything, it honestly might be just going to the Brewers to get to the opposite side of 20% owned Chris Bassett, but like, I don't like much here.
Yeah, I like the Mets side a little bit. So 4.7 implied total, basically. Is that what you said before? And it's kind of a little bit higher on that end. Yeah, we're looking at Lindor sub 5K now. Like a sub 5K, Francisco Lindor as a one-off, Marte even. Like, whatever you think about the last week, I just don't buy into hot streak. It's not a thing for me. He still has a 172 ISO, switch hitter. You get the opportunity if a bullpen in the back end comes back in, he can kind of line up however. You've got speed with Starling Marte. You've got Brandon Nimmo garnering the most attention at 3,700, but those are just cheap numbers. Like it's going to be very easy to stack up the Mets and have upside every single time. And know that if you're rostering Garrett Cole, you just have a unique lineup immediately. You get Pete Alonso. I'm really not interested in any of the catching options from the Mets, but I mean, 1 through 8, they just have capabilities to put up numbers. And so against Adrian Hauser, who is not imposing in any way, shape, or form, strikes out less than 19% of the guys he faces, walks guys at a high clip. You get some of that speed power combo up there. Even JD Davis, if he ends up in that lineup, we have tons of guys that just have upside from the Mets side. So another team that's just going underrepresented, in my opinion.
I would not be surprised if I don't have a single share of this game outside of Bassett.
Again, that's fair. But I think that for me, if you're going to look at 30 teams on the board, I mean, in terms of run creation, the Mets second against righties, 120 WRC plus, strike out at a 19.3% clip. Like there's upside. And that's what I'm saying is like, when you're trying to limit certain teams off the board, if I'm going to look at some of these value stacks, and San Diego is a big talking point for me, if I remove San Diego against Hendricks, or if I try to find ways to get away from some of the value stacks, we've got at the top of the board, Pittsburgh garnering a ton of attention against Michaelis. We've got the Cubbies against Manaea, which that makes no sense to me, but Oakland against Pivetta for sure. If I remove these teams entirely from the board, Detroit even, I have opportunities to roster just the best offenses, and the Mets are one of the best offenses in baseball, especially against righties.
Anything else for this one? Because otherwise we are at the midway point of the show, which means it is time for us to talk a little bit about a promo code that you guys should use. And seems like a great time. Wow. This read has the word Awesemo in it like 1,000 times. This should be good. MLB Strategy Show. One giant word is your promo code to get 50% off your first month of Stochastic Plus Platinum. That is something that is difficult to say out loud for me right now, but we're going to get there. It's still Awesemo Plus Platinum for all of you guys. You get access to projections, ownership, lineup builder, Discord, and more. We have everything. Top stacks, top pitchers, top golfers, top fighters, top all sorts of different stuff. Advanced tools all over the place. That's why we're stochastic now. Advanced tools all over the place. It's a stats game, people. Now, need you to know, Fantasy Cruncher is a paid add-on. It does not come in this base package. You can add it very easily at checkout. But if you use the promo code that's on the screen right now, MLB Strategy Show, one giant word, you will get 50% off your first month of Stochastic Plus Platinum. Game 8, Cardinals and Pirates. 5.5 run implied total for the Cards, 4 for the Pirates. Miles Mikolas going for St. Louis. Bryce Wilson going for the Pirates. Do not roster Bryce Wilson today, and probably do not roster Mikolas. You're muted. You're muted.
Son of a... Why am I doing this? Son of a biscuit. And then I click this button. There we are. I'm back. It's my first show. Back. Did you know that?
First show at Stochastic, so semi-true.
Oh, see? Yeah, it's just like, I don't want to make that joke. We'll continue on. But I'm looking at, I don't even know what I'm looking at. St. Louis, Pittsburgh. There you go. My favorite bet yesterday was the over on this game. It was a 9 implied run total. It was 100 degrees, and Pittsburgh got off to a 5-0 start. I also bet the +1.5 Pittsburgh, and they didn't cover. 7-5 ended up being the final. So you win some, you lose some. But this is another game where you just look at the weather and it instantly becomes extremely viable. Even the Pittsburgh side against Mikolas, I think I'm going to be getting to more Pirates once again. Yesterday, that was one of my bigger stands. Luckily, Chavez, every first baseman went nuts, whether that was Goldschmidt in this same game. You had Abreu with the double dong. Lots of spots where you needed to have certain guys, but Pittsburgh, much more appealing than you would expect, considering they're the Pittsburgh Pirates. I think just the amount of lefties that they have coming up to the plate, and then some decent enough power numbers on the likes of Chavez and Vogelbach. I think I'm probably just going to be stacking up Pittsburgh a little bit more than the field. Once again, they're my preferred value stack. But I think St. Louis on the other side, super, super potent. But be careful. Nolan Gorman got pinch hit from Harrison Bader when the lefty came in that game. I was watching it, and just really, really frustrating. So if he's going to be garnering 10%, he's got tons of pop. He's going to get those 2-3 at bats guaranteed facing the righty and Brubaker. But just be careful about not getting too much exposure, because that can definitely bite you.
I'm looking at all sorts of stuff for this one. I'm generally speaking a Mikolas guy, but I'm not a Mikolas guy today. So
100 degrees seems important.
Yeah. Well, there's just no strikeouts to be had from this dude. And it's not like the Pirates are a great strikeout matchup either. No. I am pretty interested in the Cardinals bats. They are 5th in ownership, so I'm not the only one. 9th in our stack score, though. They came up 7th for me in my top stack metric. I sort of want to have some of them. It's mostly Tyler O'Neill being 3,200 that's driving their current ownership. He's 12% owned. Everybody else is relatively low. I've got a little bit of interest in the Cardinals today.
Yeah, you should. Again, 100-degree weather. Gorman has tons of power, still 538 expected slugging, 65 out of 70 raw power score on FanGraphs for him. The dude's a monster. So batting up higher in the order there. I do like this team more against lefties. And yes, it is Wilson because they have the doubleheader going. They have Brubaker going early. So I uploaded the wrong pitcher to start. That was nice of me. But against Bryce Wilson, you're just basically looking at a spot where he is no good. North of a 7.5 ERA. That's pretty obvious. Not that you wanted to be looking at that routinely, but pretty easy to see Bryce Wilson as a guy who could get murdered in this spot in 100-degree weather. Everybody's viable here. Just be careful of some of the ownership on certain bats. Tyler O'Neill, 13.3%, 3,200 is going to be very popular for DraftKings purposes. I might make a rule where I involve him just in stacks simply because Why do I want to play a 13, 14% one-off at an outfield position where I can find tons of options? Maybe not with his power. I mean, we've seen for the last year and a half, the guy has crazy amount of power, but I can probably do better just getting elsewhere and avoiding that kind of unnecessary ownership in my lineup. I'm probably just going to take the rest of the board. So probably just going to involve him in stacks, but there are definitely stacks to be had. We'll see Harrison Bader, I guess, confirmed for the early game. We just got to be careful how that lineup comes out. If that game goes a little bit later, maybe it doesn't come out to like 2:30. That would be awesome because then you're going to get them a little bit underowned.
Pirates are the best value stack of the day, 16th in top stack odds, 5th though in our stack score. Is this a stack that you're trying to get to in order to be able to pay up more for hitting?
Yeah, absolutely. I do like this Pittsburgh stack once again. It's not very often you get game environments like this. And I mean, St. Louis, yeah, it gets hot in the summer. I mean, this is really hot. The ball should be flying again. 7-5 yesterday. They definitely aren't the best offense. There's no question about it, but went over their implied total yesterday. I think they do it again today. You have opportunity to roster everybody. The most expensive batter that you're going to be paying for is Brian Hayes at 4,100. Once again, I want to be paying attention to how this lineup comes out because on a doubleheader, you could get some really weird stuff. So be on the lookout. If it comes out really, really lopsided, well, they have Cannon, Smith, and Jigba, who got called up. I think I did that right. Jason DeLay. Lots of guys that have been added into the fray on this doubleheader. You're not going to have 2 games back to back in this kind of weather where you're going to have like Yadier Molina. I find it unlikely he's going to be catching on the Cardinals side. I find it impossible that who's catching in this early game here for Michael Perez. I find it hard to believe he's not going to, or that he will be catching in the next game. So just be on the lookout for how this lineup comes out. It could look really wonky, but as it stands right now, if it's semi-normal, Pittsburgh is definitely my preferred value stack.
I like the way they're ranking out. I don't have much else to say. Like, they were my number one value as well. So I'm in agreement with the top stack tool at this point in time. I think that I'm going to be able to get to them considering how easy they appear to be to roster. And if that just opens up more shares of Garrett Cole or Max Fried or whatever, I'm pretty happy about it. Anything else you want to touch on? Who's your favorite bat in this game? Mine's not coming from the Pirates side.
No, nor is mine. Why would it? I'm Paul Goldschmidt. I mean, he's just outrageous. You're going to say O'Neill, aren't you?
It's basically a tie for me, and I'm going to split the tie from a positional standpoint. O'Neill is tied with Nolan Gorman, actually, 3,800 second base option, and they came out of my sim the exact same way.
There you go. Just again, Nolan Gorman, pinch hit risk. He might not even end up in the lineup on the second half of a doubleheader here. They have like Edmund Sosa. They have other guys for St. Louis. So just be on the lookout. That lineup could look weird. Donovan can play second, but I think he's in the lineup for this early game. Nope, he's not. Yeah, Edmund. No, Donovan's in.
Okay. Anything else here?
Nope.
Cubs and Padres, 4.7 run implied total for the Cubs, 5.3 for the Padres. Kyle Hendricks and Sean Manaea. No ownership going to Hendricks. That should not be all that surprising. I don't have him for anything. He is 6,200. Sean Manaea, though, 7% owned on DK, not owned on FanDuel, where he's 10K. Not all that surprising there, but I had Manaea come out of my sim twice as frequently as his ownership. He is 8,500. We have someone like Cease at 8,800, who is 5 times as owned as Sean Manaea. I don't think the gap should be even close to that big. I see it more like 2-1 or less. Sean Manaea is a guy that I want to target today that is not getting any ownership. Where do you land?
I mean, it's uncomfortable. You get a win game in Wrigley, and it's extremely uncomfortable. He also has an average 16.5 degree launch angle on the season. That's pretty uncomfortable when pop flies leave the yard in Wrigley in these kind of circumstances. So I will say it makes a lot of sense in tournaments. I mean, how do you succeed in this kind of a game environment? You miss bats. And he's definitely somebody who's capable of doing that. 25.6% K percentage, 405 expected slugging against him, can be serviceable in that kind of a department. But it's definitely going to be an uncomfortable type feel. Also, the Cubs, I will say, they don't necessarily strike out as much as you might expect on the season. Let me find their split against lefties here as I'm going across. Cubbies, where did they go? 22.7% K percentage, more middle of the road now than what they've been in years past. 163 ISO. Yeah, it's definitely in tournaments. If you're going to roster some of the more popular offenses, go ahead and fire up Manaea. He's still got upside regardless, and he falls in that mid 8K range where there are just so many other guys that are garnering attention, and he's not. But there's a reason for it. It's just a very uncomfortable game environment.
I have a sneaky suspicion that Sean Manaea is going to end up in 30% of my lineups today.
30.
Oh,
that's a lot. Yeah, that's a lot. Well, have fun with that then. Because again, that's the kind of stand that can make a huge difference. I think I'm not like, even if you get, here's my big problem with it though. What is like, does Sean Manaea put up 30? And I find it hard to believe that both pitchers aren't going to be giving up some kind of a solo shot or something. Like Sean Manaea would have to be pretty flawless in this spot. Whereas Dylan Cease and Nick Pivetta, because of the matchup and the game environment, they just have a little bit of a longer leash. And if both of those guys fail and Manaea is serviceable, awesome. You're in a phenomenal spot. But I don't think that works out as much of the time, not even close. Plus, you're much more worried about some of the stacks and some of the ownership there. You know, if you get away from Coors Field or you get away from this one, you're probably in a good spot. But I just think that I'm still more in line with getting to more Cease, more Bassett, even more Pivetta. I think they just make sense. I probably prefer him over, you know, obviously Kikuchi's garnering more attention at 8K. I don't think that that's correct, but
agreed.
Sean Manaea, it's a pitcher that I love, and I've loved him since he was in Oakland. He's definitely found a better form here with San Diego this time around. I think he's had a quality start in like 7 or 8 straight games, like a ridiculous run of efficiency here for Sean Manaea. But this is just the worst spot of it, getting, 15 miles an hour blowing out.
Sure. Would you rather have Manaea or Bassett?
Definitely Bassett.
See, I have them as basically equals today, like spot on the same mark, but obviously ownership discount on Manaea. Manaea is a guy that I want to go to. Like, I would love to go to Manaea, Max Fried, and then the Cleveland Bats, something along those lines.
Do you have any concerns? Do you have any concerns that his name is Sean?
I do. That is part of I should probably add a column to my sheet in order to not have that problem in my life.
Just saying. These are the important things we have to discuss here at the Stochastic YouTube stream.
This is where it's about to get really interesting. So the Padres are second in ownership. They are number 1 in our stack score. They came out 5th in my top stack odds, 2nd in value. So very, very highly ranked across the board for the Padres. The Cubs are interesting, though. 4th in aggregate ownership, 6th in our stack score. It's a team that is 12th overall in top stack odds. They are 19th for me. I do not see the Cubs the same way that our current top stack odds are seeing the Cubs. So let's start on the Padres side, which I think we're all going to agree is a very good option today. Maybe I'm wrong, but I like targeting Kyle Hendricks. I love getting to San Diego.
I love is difficult because everybody's there. Obviously, it's more muted because you have a 15-game slate, and it's just one of those things where guys who aren't generally power hitters have power today. Like, you have to give them all massive upgrades across the board because the wind blowing out. It becomes something where if Mazzara is making contact, he's only striking out at a 14.3% clip against a righty. He gets one in the air. You have an opportunity to take it long. Manny Machado, Austin Nola, a lot of these guys make a lot of sense. What's difficult, and I think you've actually brought this up quite a bit, is 2 of the batters you really want to get to, Voit and Hosmer, you can't roster together on DraftKings. You then get some really thin type shortstop value. Kim isn't all that good of a hitter, 3K in the back end there. And then Grisham and Mazzara, Ken, they probably have more power today than they have in other spots, but they're just not quality major league hitters. Kyle Hendricks is trash, so maybe all things being equal, take the San Diego side. But at their current ownership, I currently plan to be underneath where they're at.
Interesting. Okay. When I looked at my crunch, they were 4th for me. Well, basically in a tie for 3rd. What are you doing with the Cubs then? Are you more interested in the Cubs side of this one than the Pods?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're just on opposite sides of this one. You're giving a lot of credence to Manaea. I love him as a pitcher. I just think that if we're playing the leverage game and if we're trying to play MLB DFS, I look at the current leverage you have. There's nothing to be had with San Diego. They're the second most negatively leveraged team, 15.4% ownership share, and everybody's going their direction. Well, it's the same game environment, the same exact launch angle, the same exact everything for Sean Manaea on the other side. Much more of a quality pitcher who can miss bats, and that's the one thing he has going for him. But the contact numbers for the Cubs, much better than what I think the field thinks of them to be. Christopher Morrell leading off at 4,400. One of my favorite contrarian guys. He got second base eligibility, which is a huge helper considering there was nobody other than Jonathan DR who's not even playing. That he finally has the second base eligibility he should have had a while ago. You get Ian Happ, 3,500. Wisdom, massive amount of power, 3,700. And of course, Wilson Contreras is going to be the best hitting option for the catcher position, straight up 4,500. I'm very curious to see where Sean's has him in the top batters tool as well, because he's always a guy that vaults up to the top of the board at the catcher position and just always makes a good contrarian option. Now he's garnering 13.4%, so he's the most owned of everybody. But as good as Manaea is, and as highly as you're valuing him, I think that it's basically going to be give me the unowned team compared to the popular San Diego team.
That's fair. I can understand that. I have Contreras fourth among anybody that has catcher eligibility today.
Yeah, he's a fantastic play.
Behind Kirk, and these are all very tight together. Kirk, the other Contreras, and Varsho.
Sounds about right. Varsho season, let's go.
Favorite bat in this game?
Oh, I mean, I got to take a Cubby now that I just went on that rant. I can't go crawling back to Machado. I will go with Christopher Morrell. I mean, he 2%. Let's just take the leadoff hitter there.
Yeah, so it is Machado for me, but just barely behind him is Christopher Morrell. So I have no problem at all with that shout.
Yeah.
Ooh, we are running quite long. Rangers and Astros. 4.3 run implied total. Yeah, there's a lot of we're not talking about shit at the end of this one. So four teams with 3.7 run totals or below. We'll get through that pretty quickly. Rangers and Astros, 4.3 run implied total for the Rangers, 4.6 for the Stros. Dane Dunning and Jose Urquidy. Neither guy is really pulling any ownership. I think you can make a case for some shares of Urquidy, but I don't see priority pitching here.
I see Dunning as a decent enough guy, and I get it. It's Houston. It's an abysmal matchup, but nearly a 23% K percentage. My biggest problem with Urquidy, the 17% K percentage, the 601 expected slugging, at least Dane Dunning, like we're talking a sizable difference between the two, a 435 expected slugging, which isn't good by any means, but it's not horrific. And then you can at least get some missed bats from time to time. We've also seen Houston have these iterations where Martín Maldonado, yeah, he's batting ninth, but you get Chas McCormick, who should be in this lineup today, 24.5%. If not, Jose Siri, 30.4%. Those are decent enough numbers where you actually have some strikeouts available to go with the Brantleys, the Dubons, the Alex Bregmans, the Yuli Gurriels, guys who strike out at a sub 15% clip. You have some damaging bats in the likes of Kyle Tucker and Yordan Alvarez. I feel like I'm over the field all the time on, but I mean, Dane Dunning getting zero attention whatsoever on any slate. I'm definitely going to fall into shares of him. He's just a guy that I think I value a lot more than the field does. What, 1% at 7K? I'll have a little bit.
Okay. Well, I'm just nervous that there are, other than the ass end of that Astros lineup, there's not a lot of strikeouts to go around, and clearly they are quite talented from a overall standpoint.
Again, it's a 1% pitcher playing 5% of him.
Sure.
There's no way that I'm prioritizing anybody against Houston unless it's a Garrett Cole or we saw Ohtani strike out and fan 12 of those guys earlier this season. But it is such a good major league lineup that it's hard to really vouch for Dane Dunning to be a priority. You're not going to play him in a 3 max setting, but even in a 20 max, I'm going to get to a share or two.
I mean, if we just look at the bottom 14 guys, like the bottom half of starters today, Syndergaard at 7,300 down. The only people that are getting any ownership are Rogers and Urquidy. It's 7% and 3.5%. If you're telling me that like you would rather have Dane Dunning than Jose Urquidy at the 4% ownership that's there, like to me, that makes tons of sense. I don't have an issue with that at all. Don't think I'm getting the bats here, though. 13th in ownership for the Rangers, 18th for the Astros, both teams outside of the top 10 in the top stack odds. Clearly, any individual Astros bats, particularly at the top of the order, will work as your one-off opportunities. But I am not seeing this isn't a game I'm stacking.
No, it's tough to get to anything here. I will say Texas, if you had to pick one of these two offenses to have in 150, as much as I do love Houston, I think I'd rather have Texas. Would you?
Yes.
Okay. It's weird that they're grading out better for me than Houston, because Houston, I always feel like I'm just more bullish on, even though I hate them as a real life baseball team. It's a team I end up with lots of in DFS, but I find myself where Seager, not the worst option to be falling on. Cole Calhoun, 4K. Nate Lau, 6K there for him, or Nate Lowe, excuse me. Brandon Lau, him. They have that back and forth thing back from Tampa Bay, whatever. But Nate Lowe, 3,200 for him. I think it's an offense that if you got to a little bit of 150, awesome, but I'm probably not going to do it.
I don't think I'm going to have much of either, but I'm with you that I would take the Rangers side. Who is your primary bat in this one? The best one you see?
Oh, Seager. It's got to be Seager.
I think my answer is Kyle Tucker.
Oh, he's my favorite batter in baseball, basically, other than Byron Buxton. So I don't blame you there.
Although Ezekiel Duran, second, third, 2,200, pretty easy to get to.
Yeah.
All right, one more before our final break. That would be Rockies and Guardians. And we certainly need to put some time in here because we are in Colorado. 4.7 run implied total for the Rocks, 5.8 for the Guardians. Antonio Senzatella going for Colorado. Shane Bieber going for Cleveland. No ownership going to Senzatella, nor should it. Bieber, unowned. I don't know if that's like a unowned, or he's just like not available for it, but I'm going to get to some Bieber at 9,700, even in cores. I like to target pitchers when they pitch in cores because no one seems to go there.
Yeah, I'm with you. I am worried that we end up seeing him like 5%, 6%, but even still, there's leverage to be had. 8.8% top two pitcher percentage. I think the real conversation to have about Bieber is he even remotely in play for FanDuel purposes when you have Fried, Cole, Manaea, Cease, Gonsolin, Pavetta, all guys in his range? You're not getting any kind of an ownership decrease. Like, is Shane Bieber somebody you'd still want to roster on a one pitcher site?
Probably not.
Yeah, I'm with you. Otherwise, it's really an unknown Shane Bieber in Coors Field on DraftKings.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you want to take some shots?
Yeah, I love the fact that he's unknown. Showed up in my sim 11% of the time. That is a spot that makes me at least a little bit interested. Do you want to get to the Colorado bats? Because they don't appear to be popular in any way. Most owned guy is CJ Cron at 3.6%, and they are not priced like they're in Colorado.
Yeah.
But they also suck. They're also the worst offense in the entire slate. So
other than that, they're great. Yeah. I'll have a little bit of Colorado, I'm sure. In a 20 max, they're not going to make it. 150, they'll make it. It's just Coors Field. We've seen Kershaw have issues there forever. Shane Bieber, I don't think he's ever pitched in Coors Field before. It's just not a fantastic spot to be looking at. But at the same time, it's freaking Coors Field with unowned bats. Why wouldn't that be somewhat appealing?
They're actually, the Rockies are 8th for me in my top stack metrics. So I guess I have to have at least a little bit of interest. Yeah, it's significantly higher than the 14th that we have them in the top stack score. So I like going that direction. Now we got to talk about the chalk. Number one owned team with a bullet today. Second in our stack score. They are the number one stack in our top stack metric. They're number two for me. To me, probably a bit over-owned, but everything looks good here. Targeting Senzatella, yes. The lineup in general looks really good. I have no problems there. I clearly understand why they're chalk.
Yeah, I don't even really know what to say other than it's tournaments and you have 29 other teams to be looking at. And it always becomes one of those conversations where do they truly end up this owned? Because what happens is if we can all just sit here and say, hit eject on Cleveland at their current ownership. There's been a number of times where this team that you would be looking at that's massively overowned as it stands right now, where they end up actually a lot lower owned than you would think. It's such a hard thing to get a gauge on. Our ownership is as good as it gets, though. And we're seeing Jose Ramirez 6,100 with 28.4% ownership. As much as I love the guy, with his nearly 350 ISO. It is so hard for me to go click on his name when I can take the entire position. I can play 29 other third basemen and more than that because multiple positional eligibility. So Ahmed Rosario, like all these guys garnering tons of attention. If you're playing cash games, ignore everything that I'm saying. You're playing all of these guys, especially Oscar Gonzalez, 2,900. I might even run into some of him just building out lineups where I need somebody cheap. And it's a sub 3K bat in Coors Field. So, I mean, I bet I still run into some of him, but I find it impossible to believe that I'm going to get over the field on any single individual Cleveland bat.
Yeah, you mentioned the ownership to Ramirez, and that's a very different item from a cash game perspective. But like he's 28% owned. Austin Riley is 4. Rafael Devers is 7. These guys are not all that different than each other. Even Machado at 17% ownership. Like if you just build a very chalky lineup to start, and then just turn Jose Ramirez into Austin Riley or turn Manny Machado into Rafael Devers, like you're making a significantly you're more likely to win a contest at that point in time by just taking a half to significantly more than half ownership discount. That's not to say that Ramirez doesn't look good. It's not to say that you can't use the Guardians, but be aware of those distinctions when you're putting your lineup together.
Yeah, it's ironic too, because he's usually been one of my highest owned one-offs because he's the only guy from Cleveland I ever really want in any kind of a capacity. And he's always 5-6%. This is the exact opposite of all of those situations. I'm just going to play the entire position with everybody else. Let 30% of the field go Jose Ramirez's chance or go Jose Ramirez's way. I'll take my chances elsewhere. But yeah, I will say Josh Naylor sitting at 10.7%. I just did say that I would get below the field on every single bat. That might be one guy at first base, 4,500. He might fit into some lineups nicely. Haven't built them out, but as far as these outfielders go, Oscar Gonzalez, much more of a priority. Miles Straw, it's a leadoff hitter in Coors, but he's much more of a speed guy against Senzatella. It's just kind of it's going to be an uncomfortable fate in tournaments, but I think it must be done.
Best bat in this game is very clearly Jose Ramirez.
Yes, really. Yeah. Oscar Gonzalez for value, though.
Sure. Well, it's about that time. I should basically just throw this one directly to you, but we'll get to you in a second. Prize Picks, the presenting sponsor of this show. Let's start here. If you're signing up at Prize Picks, use the promo code Awesemo. I don't believe that promo code is stochastic just yet. Get $100 first match deposit bonus. You can make a 5-player lineup that nets up to 10x your entry fees. You're basically building parlay cards. You can do this across sports, and they have all sorts of sports, including highlight. So if you've got a highlight take, you can pair some of those takes up with MLB, NBA, soccer, whatever you're really interested in. PGA. But what you really should do is start tailing Eric in his Prize Picks because he is smashing the game right now. If you're not following him on Twitter, do so immediately so that you can know what he's getting on. Check out every piece of Prize Picks content that he's putting out because it's just been going quite well as of late.
Yesterday I went 0 for 4, but we're going to overlook that fact. So I
thought you rebounded.
I'm just being honest. I was super stoked because all I did was stack up the late games because let's see, Yu Darvish decided to be good again. He went over 37.5. Marcus Semien decided to be good again. He went over 7.5 fantasy points. And then my home run call Acuna did not come to fruition. So 0 for 3 in those regards. But you know what? We continue on today. Last week, again, you're not going to win them all. Plus, last week had 4 of 5 where I had 3 of 3 cards. So that's going to be profitable in the long term doing the power play. But yeah, I ended up stacking up Buxton and Walker out of pure spite for my early card. And it worked out.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure we had a conversation last night where
we did.
It's started printing on Prize Picks on the late.
I did. I tweeted it out. It was nice to see it come to fruition at the end of the night. But again, we're trying to help the people make money. And even if, I found a way to make it from the late slate stuff, the early card was unacceptable and I take full responsibility, but check out Taco Tuesday, folks. We got 2 shots on goal for Harry Kane. I still like the under of his 0.5 goals, but if you're going to be picking one of them and you're going to play $25 of action, the over on 2 shots for Harry Kane, normally a 3.5 projection we're looking at for that, feels like an easy click to begin your day. And then you head over to the MLB streets. We talked about this game environment we're looking at for Coors Field. one of the easy ways to get some exposure. Crone, Blackman, Rogers, Joe, you could be going that direction and find some kind of a capacity there. But San Diego, you talked about it. I mean, we see such massive home run numbers with the wind blowing out in Wrigley. Machado, Cronenworth, Profar. The other two are basically castaways to get to Machado. I'm going to click on him. I'll take the over of fantasy score for Manny Machado, and that'll kind of be my hedge on the game.
There you go, everybody. Make sure you're using that promo code to sign up. Get $100 on a first match deposit bonus. 4 more games to go. We should be able to zip through them relatively quickly. First one up, Diamondbacks and Reds, 4.6 run implied total for the D-backs, 4.3 for the Reds. Zach Davies and Tyler Mahle. No one is owning Zach Davies at this moment. He lands in like the Dane Dunning bucket for me. If you prefer him to Trevor Rogers or Keedy, go for it. I don't have much of a preference because the Reds are absolutely dreadful. Tyler Mahle, 8% owned. Seems about right. I don't have much of a take here either. This just isn't a priority from a pitching perspective. It's really not a priority at all. I don't give a shit about the bats or the arms.
Do you want the worst take ever?
No, but I'm sure you're going to give it to me.
Yeah, here you go. I think I might click on Zach Davies a little bit today.
Okay.
He's limited hard contact in such an extreme way. 31.2% hard hit percentage, 19.3% strikeout rate, but we're starting to see it climb here in the last couple starts. Slight uptick to velocity, mixing up some of the pitches. I think it's playable against Cincinnati at home in Arizona here. We've now seen 7 and 6 strikeouts. So 7, 6, and 5 his last 3 outings against the Dodgers, Pittsburgh in this very same Cincinnati offense. We're seeing him start to induce ground balls over 100 pitches. He's 6,900. He falls exactly in that Dane Dunning bucket, but I think I might like I might like Zach Davies a little bit more because obviously the matchup.
Yeah. So I have Davies by 0.3 of a point over Dunning. I basically have them as the exact same guy. So I'd be happy to get shares of either if you're just trying to get to a no owned guy at the bottom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't have a single priority from a bat perspective here. That's for sure.
Yeah. Mahle, 25.8% percentage. He's just going to fall into some lineups. He's probably the best play 7,500 and down. It always makes me worry that people are actually going to click on him a little bit more as it stands, but I think they should. I like him more than I like Urquidy. I like him more than I like Rogers. Definitely more than Dunning and Davies, but he's actually garnering some kind of attention. If you need to be paying up for a stack, he's an all right click with that K percentage. I've liked Arizona a lot more than the field, and I'll still like Christian Walker. I mean, this guy, 633 expected slugging, and nobody's paying attention. He hit a home run yesterday. I think that puts him up to 17. We're just seeing him do some ridiculous stuff. So I'm okay getting to him as a one-off, but yeah, no priority from either side for any bat whatsoever.
Perfect. Yeah, I don't even have like this is the bat I recommend guy. 4.2% Dalton Varsho is the highest ranked guy. That's not exactly highly ranked. By the way, everybody, 320 viewers, 60 likes. Let's get that number up to 100. I haven't asked yet. We need 40 more to get to 100, 3 digits. Let's hit that thumbs up. It'll help out a ton. Let's go to the Giants. 4.9 run implied total, taking on the Royals, 3.1 there. Logan Webb is 9,100. He's 10% owned, and I agree with it. Chris Bubich is 5,400. He is unowned, and I agree with it. What are you going to do with Logan Webb? Does anything major stand out here, or does 10% seem about right to you?
Seems about right, and we want that K percentage to start trailing back up for him. But Kansas City's a decent enough spot to maybe be picking up a little bit more on that 20% K percentage. He's doing everything else pretty darn well, limiting some of the hard contact. And as you said about Chris Bubich, he's just absolutely terrible. Still going to be hard in this game environment to prioritize it over anything else. But the other massive factor is the Giants can pinch hit for everybody. It feels like at any given moment for whomever they want to have come out of for Kansas City, whoever ends up coming up from the bullpen once Bubich gets lit up. So it's a tough thing all around for me to get to anything in this game outside of Webb.
All righty. Yeah, from the Giants side, they are 4th in aggregate ownership, 4th in stack score. I'm a bit lower on the Giants. I don't generally like getting to bats in San Francisco, even if it is a relatively advantageous spot. So this is probably like my biggest fade in comparison to our current ownership. Are you getting to San Francisco against Bubich?
Nope. I said it's hard to want to roster up a team where you could have certain guys just get 3 at bats, and we still have Belt on the IL. We still have Wade Jr. on the IL. That helps a little bit, but we've seen Ramos start to come to fruition a little bit. He's 2K. Yeah. He hasn't been good so far, but it's a righty that they can bring in if they start off with. If he ends up being the guy that gets the start here, and then they can bring Gonzalez in if he's not in the lineup to begin with. Yastrzemski's the one guy it feels like we'll just never get pinch hit for, but even you have La Stella Flores, that can be a 1v1 swap out that they'll do. It's just a hard offense for me, even with a 5 implied run total, when there's certain bats in your 5-man stack that are going to get pinch hit for. Hard to prioritize them over these other great game environments where it's not 65 degrees and it's not in San Francisco.
Royals are 28th in ownership, 29th in stack score, 29th in my top stack metric. I don't have a single word that I should say here.
Yeah, that's all. I got distracted. Ban Sean V. Eric is the best. You're welcome, Ban Sean V. What a great name.
Completely agree. Mariners and Twins, 3.7 run implied total on both sides of this one. Logan Gilbert and Joe Ryan on the hill, 9,200 and 8,700 respectively. Logan Gilbert is 12% owned. Doesn't appear that Joe Ryan is pulling much ownership at all. I don't know if he's just not in our ownership projections right now because it feels like he should at least get a little bit of love. I think Logan Gilbert is the better option. I don't think there's a giant gap between the two of these guys. And I think the $500 more than makes up for it. But I will likely have about 10 to 15% of both of these guys.
He only threw 40 pitches his last game, and Joe Ryan specifically, 8,700. I think he's unplayable today. He threw 30 pitches. Maybe he gets ramped up immediately back up to what he was before. He's so good, but I just don't think the pitch count is in a spot where we can really be going to Joe Ryan here. He got activated off the COVID-19 related list, but I mean, he had a start in AAA for rehab in St. Paul's. So I got to think that he's just limited in that kind of a capacity, because if he wasn't, I mean, 103.79 pitches his last two. I mean, it's been almost a month since we've seen him. He's a really good pitcher.
I'm going to knock an out off of his projection here. That'll probably bring him down a little bit more.
Yeah. Otherwise, he was going to probably jump out because he's good.
Yeah, I'm a fan. Gilbert, on the other hand, I think is properly owned.
Yeah, he's properly owned. He's a guy you're going to fall into some shares of. They're young. I mean, Joe Ryan's been better than him straight up this season, which is crazy to think about. 24.4% K percentage is identical to Ryan, but the hard hits are what gets him in trouble. 47.4% hard hit percentage, can give up some massive shots from time to time. We've seen a couple games of late where that can catch up to him, but he's appropriately owned. He should have some shares going his way. He's thrown over 100 pitches, 5 straight. He's starting to put up serviceable outings, even against the likes of Houston, who he's played twice, Boston and Toronto. Minnesota is a lot easier matchup than what he's seen of late.
28th in ownership for the Mariners, dead last in stack score. 25th in ownership for the Twins, 28th in stack score. These two teams are not getting rostered from a pitching or from a hitting perspective, and I don't believe they should. These are two straight cross-offs from an offense.
Well, I mean, I'm an absolute homer, so there you go. Buxton, Kepler, Larnach. I have nothing else. I mean, Minnesota, Seattle, they're unappealing beyond all belief, but I got to have my one yellow team stack.
We're going to close it out with the game that you're attending. The LA Dodgers taking on the LA Angels. 4.9 run implied total for the Dodgers, 3.7 for the Angels. Tony Gonsolin and Noah Syndergaard, neither arm pulling any ownership. And I don't really have much of a disagreement with it.
Yeah, it's just Tony Gonsolin. I will say the thing that's nice about him is the pitch count has started to ramp up here a little bit. I mean, we saw 90, low 90s, only 89 and 84 his last two, but he's basically hit that 6 inning mark and stopped. Like, they basically say, hey, get us to this point, and then we'll bring our bullpen and do the matchup thing that we want to do, because that's what the Dodgers do. He's got massive positive leverage. He's a pitcher that I just think is phenomenal from a real life perspective. And now you do get a massive amount of K upside when you get Marsh, Velasquez, Walsh, Stassi, all these guys into the mix. Even Trout, Ohtani over 25% strikeout rates here. Depending on how that lineup comes out, it could look really advantageous. And I don't think it can be stated enough how good Tony Gonsolin is at preventing hard contact. Again, if Trout or Ohtani get a hang of one, it doesn't really matter. But a 328 expected slugging with a abysmal back half of the lineup, I probably have more interest than you do.
It seems like you do.
Yeah.
I got Gonsolin in 2%, so, and nothing for Syndergaard. So it doesn't look like I'm going to be going that direction.
Yeah, 0 Syndergaard.
And I'm not entirely sure I'm going to get all that much from an offense perspective here. I'm certainly not getting to the Angels. If you would like to one-off Mike Trout or Shohei Ohtani, by all means. But they are 22nd in ownership, 22nd in top stack. That's just not for me. I'm a little bit more interested in the Dodgers bats than our top stack tool shows, but they're also 12th in ownership. And I think that's probably about right. So if I get Dodger stacks, yay, it's an all-star team. That should be fine, but not exactly a high-level priority for me either.
Yeah, Max Muncy with second base, third base eligibility, sub 5K. That's going to always be good cleanup. You get Freddie Freeman, who's going to eventually start hitting homers again. That'd be nice to see. But Trey Turner up to 6K is just absurd to try to get up there to it. You're just paying up to be contrarian for one of the best offenses in baseball. And Noah Syndergaard, despite himself, I mean, he's just not getting any strikeouts. He's found ways to be serviceable throughout this season. It's been a little frustrating because I feel like I've been stacking up against him more than not. And other than the Yankees game, which was everybody was playing up against Syndergaard, there hasn't been that great of results here of late. So I'm still going to try to get to some Dodger stacks. I'm going to be attending the game, you said. So I gotta have a little bit on that side of it, but no way that they would be just like one of my favorite stacks to be getting to on the board today.
Well, let's sum it all up. Who are your favorite stacks on the board today?
All right. We talked about from a value perspective. I'm going back to Pittsburgh. I think that game environment, Cardinals on the other side, 100 degrees in St. Louis for a ballpark that is yielding more homers, just partially because you have home run hitters there in the St. Louis side. Arenado looked awful at the plate yesterday, but it doesn't matter. It's Nolan Arenado. I'm going to be going to that side of it. Definitely the Yankees. You have some value pieces to stack in accordance with some of the major boppers in Stanton and Judge. I think that that's going to be a big stand I take. And then really hitting eject on San Diego quite a bit for me. I know you'll be on the opposite end of that, and I'll be going to the Cubbies.
Okay. Favorite pitching?
Garrett Cole, clear number one. Try to erase everything that happened in Minnesota. Get one of those Men in Black pens and just free yourself so you get to tons of him. Dylan Cease, but he's garnering more attention. I'm going to be paying a very close attention to Pivetta and him at the exact same number, because I think Pivetta, if he ends up around 12%, I would really be kicking myself if Cease gets up to the high 30s. And then as a contrarian option, again, there's nothing sub 7,500. Why not try Dane Dunning, Zach Davies, and some of these other filthy pitchers?
Cole, Bassett, Cease, Manaea, they're going to be the first four guys that I'm looking at. Cleveland, Atlanta, San Diego, the Cardinals, some of the top stacks that I'm looking at. But I'll be going through this whole bad boy again on the deeper dive with Adam in not too many hours. So tune into that one. Eric, anything else you want to touch on before we get out of here?
Hey, it's great to debut Stokastic today. Let's have a fantastic day at Stokastic.
I like it. I like the alliteration there. Thank you guys for joining us. Thanks to Prize Picks for sponsoring the show. PGA Strategy Show coming up in 30 minutes. But thank you guys for watching the MLB Strategy Show. Hit that like button. And thank you to Stokastic for being the name of the company now. We're out of here. Peace.